Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, February 10th, 2019, and we're going to look at a 2020 presidential election prediction between Senator Bernie Sanders from the state of Vermont and President Donald Trump, of course, from his home state of New York. Not that it really matters considering that it is New York, but just for keeping everything the same. But today, again, when we go through this 2020 election video, yesterday I made a video discussing Donald Trump's approval ratings in specific states. And it ended up with the Democratic Party taking 428 electoral votes, Donald Trump taking 105 and 5 contested electoral votes based off his popularity. And that, of course, is not a good sign. Bernie Sanders, being the most popular politician in the United States at this point, definitely seems like he could do very good against the president. But when it comes down to two candidates, or even four, when you factor in the Green and Libertarian parties, it still doesn't replicate that map based off approval ratings. That map is not what's going to happen in 2020. I can tell you that right now. And Bernie Sanders probably is not going to win states like Missouri or Montana, and it makes sense. These states sure can disapprove of the president, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Donald Trump won't win there. Barack Obama didn't necessarily have the highest approval ratings in states like Indiana or Missouri or North Carolina and Montana, but he was able to carry states like Indiana and North Carolina in 2008 and come very, very close in Missouri and Montana, more so Missouri. But again, approval ratings do actually make an impact when it comes down to the swing states. Obviously, it's not going to flip states Missouri like Missouri blue, and it's probably not going to flip states like New York red, depending on how well the president is approved of. But when you're looking at the 2020 electoral map, you do have to factor it in for some states, not so much others. But let's go ahead and start with all the safe Trump states. We know that a number of these states are always going to remain in the Donald Trump column. Let me go ahead and set the mode to paint and not move. I do not want to move it. Let's go ahead and click Donald Trump, and let's start characterizing all the safe states. Now, one thing that may be a little interesting, some of these states may not actually be safe. Some of them may be likely at this point, and that's not the worst thing for the president. It could be a lot worse, but it doesn't necessarily spell out good news. States like South Carolina and Kansas are probably going to be just a tad bit closer than where they were back in 2016. But Kansas and South Carolina especially, has taken a little bit more of a turn in terms of favor for the Democratic Party. And they're probably going to end up in the likely column, upwards 13, 14, 11 to 14%, whatever it may be. But that's still not the best thing for the president, but it also isn't the worst. He's winning the state regardless. Electoral votes are electoral votes, and it's not like he's heavily relying on Kansas and South Carolina to go for him. If he's able to win in other spots, and if the other places are going for Trump, then these places are definitely going for the president. So he starts off with 116 electoral votes. Let's go ahead and actually characterize the remaining two states, Utah and Alaska. I would characterize as safe Trump states at this point. Missouri arguably could move over into the likely column, joined by Indiana and possibly Montana. That's actually something to discuss. Utah, if an independent runs. If not, they're probably going to remain in the safe column. Mississippi, actually, that's one I do think will move into the likely column just based off African-American turnout in the year 2020. But for Bernie Sanders, he may not be the best candidate to appeal to African-American voters. I get the argument every election year that he is one of the best because of his history fighting for Black Americans, but how much did that actually help him back in the 2016 Democratic primaries, or how much is that actually helping him when you look at the 2020 Democratic primary polls? The early polls said Hillary Clinton would win, and she did win. Now they're saying Joe Biden's going to win. Joe Biden hasn't announced, but he's probably going to. Bernie Sanders has not announced yet. He's also probably going to. But it really just depends. But let's go ahead and characterize all the safe Bernie Sanders states. We know the same routine: Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Maryland, Delaware, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, the District of Columbia, and New York, and Illinois. So that puts Bernie Sanders at 182, well ahead of the president. But there still are a number of states to go through. But right now, if you're looking at it, obviously the Democratic Party has more safe states. But Donald Trump came very close to winning a couple of other states back in 2016, like Minnesota and New Hampshire and Nevada. But he also came very close to losing certain states, like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And these are the states we're going to be focusing on a lot. You see states like Texas, Georgia, and Arizona in the toss-up column. Arizona, probably out of all of them, makes the most sense. Texas and Georgia, not so much. This is a presidential election year. Republicans are going to be out to vote. This is not a midterm year where people think that their Senate race may be safe, and it actually isn't safe. But even then, This is a presidential election year. The Republican Party will be at their best and peak turnout, considering that this is a president that they're going to need to defend because they know the Democratic Party already has the upper hand. Back in 2016, the Democratic Party thought they would slide through the 2016 election, be an easy win, but it wasn't. And although the polls indicated so, yeah, I mean, they didn't necessarily indicate a safe win or just a slide through the presidency. They were pretty close, to be completely honest with you. But the Democratic Party definitely expected a lot more than what they got on election night. Now, for Donald Trump, he's probably going to carry the state of Texas. It's probably going to remain in the likely column for him. Georgia, for right now, I would characterize as a lean GOP state. We haven't really started going into lean states because we do have some likely states still out. But I do think that Georgia needed to be mentioned because it is such a big toss-up state, and it is discussed. Well, it has been discussed since 2016 and then the 2018 midterms with Stacey Abrams in the news recently a lot. Georgia going into the lean Republican column. For Bernie Sanders, though, I do think that Virginia will be a likely state. That's just expected as the state has moved a lot more towards the Democratic Party. The issue with the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, and governorship, I do think that that's going to negatively impact them in 2021. Not so much in the presidential election. New Hampshire, I would characterize as a likely state for Bernie Sanders. Right now, negative 18 approval rating for the president. That is not a good sign. Considering he didn't even win the state back in 2016, he doesn't have any voters to lose. And he's already at a point where when he got into office, they didn't necessarily approve of him too much. It was -1 disapprove or +1 approve. Still very close to the zero margin. And now it's even worse for him. And that's pretty understandable. If you remember back to what he called the state in early 2017 or late 2017, calling it, I don't know, he related it to drugs somehow. So much has happened since then. I can't remember the exact quote, which also means that people in New Hampshire may not exactly remember the one quote, but I guarantee it, the Democratic Party will definitely remind them of it when it comes down to even the primary elections. I mean, using that, being anti-Trump to win in the Democratic primary in that state. But enough about New Hampshire. Going up to the state of Maine, I would characterize Maine at large as a likely state. Maine's first district I would characterize as a safe district for Bernie Sanders. For Donald Trump, we're probably going to come back to that one. Looking over in the rest of the country, New Mexico I would characterize as likely, joined by Colorado. Colorado has taken a little bit more of a turn into the Democratic Party's favor. Right now, Donald Trump, I do think, can narrowly win in North Carolina. I think that one will be a lean state for the president of the United States. Bernie Sanders, though, I do think can win with a lean margin in the state of Nevada, but also in the 2nd District win with a lean margin, which puts Bernie Sanders at 223 electoral votes. Not exactly the worst standpoint. For Donald Trump, though, I do think he's going to narrowly carry that 2nd District, in the state of Nebraska. Now that leaves Florida, Arizona, Ohio, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Those 4 states along the Rust Belt we know are probably going to go a certain way. Amy Klobuchar actually just announced she was running for president today. That was pretty interesting. Around 12 p.m. I think I went on Google. I just typed in 2020 election to see if Joe Biden had announced yet. And Amy Klobuchar was speaking live, and then I saw text Amy to whatever number, and I was like, yep, she's definitely running. And then after about 2 hours of the live stream, she did announce that she was going to run. But that's not necessarily the biggest news. She's not really a front runner at this point, but she is very popular in her own home state. She's going to be a very good candidate when it comes to appealing to the Rust Belt, but how well she does in the Democratic primary, that's the whole issue. So 120 toss-up electoral votes. Where can Donald Trump do well in? Well, I think he could do pretty well in the state of Florida. I do think he can narrowly carry the state of Florida, and that's a big one. If Florida goes, typically the rest of the country goes as well. 2008, 2004, 2012, 2016, 2000, 1996. I don't think there was a time where the Democratic Party won there since 1996, where the losing candidate won in Florida and then lost the election. Discussing 2000 is a whole other issue, but in terms of, I guess, certified election results, I don't think there was a time where a losing candidate, since 1996, won the state of Florida. But Donald Trump is going to carry the state of Florida with its 29 electoral votes. And going over to Arizona, I do think he's going to narrowly carry that one as well, putting it into the lean Democratic Party column. But Minnesota, I would actually characterize as a likely state. Michigan and Wisconsin, I would also characterize as likely states. These states have shown extreme, they just I guess you could say disgust or whatever the term. There are so many terms that could describe the way that they feel about the president. A lot of them who voted for Trump are withdrawing their support from him. If you look at the beginning of his term, he definitely had a lot more support across the Rust Belt than he does now. In fact, it was in the positive. Now it's in -18, -16, -15. That's not a good look. Minnesota, I believe, is above -20, and Wisconsin and Michigan are both -18. He won here by less than 1%. He cannot afford to lose more than 1% of the vote, or actually less than 1% of the vote. So far, he's at -18% disapproval statewide. That's insane. That's not a good sign for his reelection bid. And Pennsylvania, I would characterize for right now as a lean Democratic state. It looks crazy seeing Wisconsin and Michigan, Minnesota all likely, and then Pennsylvania lean. But I do think it probably could be 4 or 5% for Bernie Sanders, possibly more depending on how the rest of the season goes. But Iowa and Ohio, even though Iowa right now, I believe, is also joined with the rest of the states at -14, I believe, in the state of Iowa. Right now, that's not good for the president. But also Bernie Sanders, I don't see winning there. And I get it. This state, sure, heavily disapproves of the president at this point. The same argument was made for those Rust Belt states. But he didn't just narrowly edge out a victory in Iowa. He won Iowa by nearing 10%, which means he can afford to lose 10% of the vote. And even then, he's still at around -4% in terms of net approval. But keep in mind, these people always tend to come back. If it was based off approvals alone, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota would all be safe states. But they're not. Pennsylvania would be a likely state, but it's not. New Hampshire would be a safe state. It's not. So a number of these people who disapprove of the president are going to come back to him, but not all of them. A lot of these people definitely have a general distaste for this president, and a lot of them do end up regretting their votes, whether it's for Barack Obama, which is why Indiana had a sudden flip, Missouri had a sudden flip, not really flip, but change in terms of the share the Republican Party got in the vote. Indiana heavily turned towards the GOP. Missouri heavily turned towards the GOP. And the reason was these people didn't like what Obama was doing in office. The same thing is happening in the Rust Belt now. Ohio, for right now, actually approves more of the president than Iowa, which is pretty surprising. But I would characterize Ohio as a narrow Trump state, which finalizes our electoral map at 259 for Donald Trump and 279 for Bernie Sanders. So again, that wraps up today's video. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.